What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. Before we get going, as always, there's the newsletter which you can subscribe for 5 to 10 swing trade ideas. The link's in the description. Also, we're on Instagram. You can find us at tradebrigade.co for a morning scan and usually a little technical bit of information in the afternoon. And one new thing, just based on people reaching out, I did start a Discord server. So if we come over here, you can see I will invite you guys and share this link down below in the description as well. There's no one in it yet, but obviously you guys are here to fill it up. We'll chat and be able to discuss the market in real time in this server. So if you're interested, head on into the description and join there, and that will now be available. Without further ado, let's get back into the analysis. As always, we have the broad market, SPY, the Qs, and IWM. After that, we take a look at Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, Microsoft, and Amazon. So without further ado, let's hop in. Starting off with SPY on the weekly time frame, you can see that we have this weekly sort of indecision candle after we've been in an upward sort of melt up, if you will, for the past 7 weeks now. So nice to see that we're starting to consolidate a bit. You can see we have a new all-time high up here at 312.69. So that's something to keep in mind. But when we move down to the daily, you can see we're trading well above our resistance trend line from the past. We have a nice week of sort of sideways consolidation with lots of hammers coming into play right off of this resistance level we had marked off around 309.65. So great to see that acting as support now that we are above it. Looks like we're starting to round out a bit. However, these are still red hammers, so we're waiting for confirmation. Before the market looks like it wants to go any higher, we'll put in our new all-time high resistance up here right around 312.69. Just as a reminder when we get up there that, hey, there is some resistance to be seen overhead. Again, if we break out above that, we're playing whole and half dollars into the blue sky territories. However, if we break down, our supports are sort of mapped out for us. This gap has been filled. Obviously, we have the tail of this candle here doing that for us, but there still remain a few gaps below us, such as here, and this glaring gap still remains below us here as well. So any sort of bigger market event that pushes us lower, I wouldn't be surprised if 294, this big gap fill here, is something that happens. Again, that's going to take a lot of selling, a lot of volume, sort of a big panic and news event to drive something like that all in 1 week. But just keep it in mind as a target. I'm not saying that the market's going to break down. I'm just saying keep it in mind. More than likely, I think we'll see some consolidation here like we're already starting to see. As long as this 309 level holds as support, I see a breakout over 312.69, the all-time high here, very likely because of the recent trend. Just look at our moving averages moving up together nicely. Good separation, and we are trading well above our resistance trend line, so that's a bullish signal. Qs on the daily have also set a new all-time high. We'll mark that one in there. That's 203.84. Actually nail it with the line, so that was kind of cool. You can see we have a bit of a soft pullback here with nice hammer candles, lower shadows touching right off of our previous resistance. So that's really awesome to see. That to me looks like a nice back test and then go. So I wouldn't be surprised if on Monday we see a move up in the Qs, just as, you know, this is sort of solidifying that this is indeed support. We're looking for resistance at the all-time high, and again, any breakout above that is whole and half dollars into the blue sky territories. Any breakdown lower than this sort of support that we're seeing here, I would get rid of this one. So we'll remove that drawing price level. You can see this sort of triple bottom based on the tail of this hammers is more important than what we had up here. So keep this one in mind. That's 273 cents. If we break down below that, I could see a move down to 197.90. Anything lower, again, this is sort of the equivalent to the glaring gap in SPY, which is way down here. That's closer to 188, 190 level. But our supports are mapped out for us, so keep those levels in mind. Lastly, IWM. Just a really good looking bullish move in the upwards direction. You can see it consolidating nicely. Sellers and buyers are starting to agree on a mutual price. That's sort of what consolidation represents. So if we can agree here, then there's the potential for the bulls to step up one more time, make another push higher. This is like sort of unlike what we've seen at every other rejection from up here. So up here we came up, got rejected, and immediately fell back off. Up here, we didn't quite nearly get into the highs, but when we did, you can see this big spike up, sold right off. This sort of sideways consolidation was nice. It produced this nice secondary little move up, but now that we're up and above sort of some of these points and resistance areas, we're in the zone, sort of this resistance zone. The consolidation is nice to see. It's flagging nicely. Everything's almost textbook here, so I wouldn't be surprised if a breakout over this resistance trend line pushes the IWM and Russell small caps higher. That being said, if we do get into this sort of area here, there's no real resistance, very, very emotional selling, as we have talked about in the past in this sort of area of the chart. So I would just play intraday levels that develop in between the 161 whole dollar level and all the way up to 170 just about. So keep that big area in mind. Again, a pullback. If we see continued pullback, we want to stay in this channel, but if we break down further, our supports and resistances are mapped out. 50 SMA, this blue line here, is starting to coincide with our 155 level, we'll call it, just to play a round number. So that should act as a super support should the price get down into it. Before we get into our companies, if you're enjoying the analysis so far, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. It certainly helps me out a lot, and I really do appreciate it. So starting off on Apple, as always with our companies, you can see big move up as we've been talking about in the past couple weeks, really just being on a monster run here. But we're starting to see some pullback, which is sort of coinciding with the market, pulling back into the support level at 260 as we had talked about. So this was a nice candle here that showed it was indeed support with this tail. Right now it's really going to come down to what happens on Monday and early on next week. If we break down below it, I'd target our next support here at 255.64, which is fine. Considering the scope of the run that we've been on. You can see our support trend line is way down here, this dotted line. So any pullback really even into that is, in my opinion, still a higher low. We'd ideally like to see it happen above this level here at 241.07. So keep that in mind. If we get down into that level, that would be more of a bearish signal just based on how big that pullback is, but it is still an overall clear uptrend here on Apple. So anything over our new all-time high here at 268 would put us in blue sky territories. And as always, that's whole and half dollar resistance, as well as any levels that form intraday. Netflix is continuing to surprise me, but that's what you get in the market. You get surprises all the time. We're just here to react to them. So we do have a resistance zone that we're sort of butting our heads up into now. We have a triple top here and then a clear rejection back into that level here between 310 and 316. You can see prices starting to poke into it, but it's falling a little bit early. This sort of hanging man, if you will, up here at the top of this move, where we have a nice tail. Selling pressure was there during the day, but the buyers really recovered and pushed prices back up. We're going to play the chart as it lies. If it can break through this resistance zone, I would target the 200 SMA, which is right around $330 on Netflix. If we do get rejected at this resistance zone, then possibly looking for a pullback into this area to look for support here. If this acts as support, then we do have an uptrend forming here. We have low, higher low, higher low, higher high, and now we're trying to put in that new higher high. So a new higher low is certainly still healthy for this small uptrend that we're forming. Again, if this acts as support, I'd retarget this resistance zone if we get any sort of hammers around here this upcoming week. Tesla's a funny one. I'm sure all of you guys have seen the Tesla truck unveiling and the breakable glass window that went wrong, so I'm sure that had something to do with this massive gap down and just sell off for the rest of the day. Tesla, always the wild card. It could recover violently. It could fall violently. This one is one of those ones that you got to play with caution. It's very volatile, and it's in a very expensive price range. So that being said, if you're using options to play it, obviously you got to be quick and in and out with a tight stop loss. All those things, risk management, apply here on Tesla more so than anywhere else. So that being said, where do I think price could head? Well, I could see it coming back down into this support zone right around 319 to 310. That's quite a large zone, but you can see that's sort of where we were chopping around and consolidating after the pullback from this massive day here. That's one target. If we do see a reversal here, then we could do a gap fill to the upside. Keep in mind now that there are a couple gaps that in theory could fill. So we have the large gap below us, or the large gap, sort of, or not large, but smaller gap above us, which could also fill. So we could see a fill up to this gap. Then once that's filled, see a gap fill reversal there and then come back down. The possibilities are sort of endless here, but based on this candle here on Friday and the negative news, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tesla continue to sell off into this support zone, more likely 310 than the 319, but that's one option. There could be the opposite reaction where things like this have happened in the past. Elon Musk goes on Joe Rogan's show, smokes weed one time, price gaps way down. Next day, it's as if nothing really happened. So keep that option in mind as well. We can see that when we scroll back. Like some of these crazy days down here, we had a huge gap down. Maybe he was on the podcast this day. Then price came right back up and traded like normal as if nothing really happened. Same thing here. Huge gap down. Price came right back up as if nothing had happened. So, Tesla is really the wild card, and I just want to warn you against that when we see crazy major news events on the company. Alibaba is consolidating sort of nicely right at and underneath the resistance trend line from our longer term symmetrical triangle. This to me, now that we're starting to break out above it, we do kind of have a small, I could draw this one in for us. It looks like a resistance trend line that's happening right above our prior resistance trend line we had talked about. You can see rejection, rejection, rejection. If we can break out above that, then I'm looking to target 195 just about. That would be a nice move up and out of the symmetrical triangle to start. There could be a move out, a back test of this 188 to confirm it as support once we get above it, and then the move. Or our last scenario could be a rejection off of this trend line and a continued consolidation where I would target this set of lows in here right around 181 as support on any sort of pullback. Facebook is continuing to just move up inside of this little wedge pattern here. So right now, obviously, we're at resistance. You can see we got rejected here, and now it's starting to act as resistance again, triple top over in this area of the chart. So not surprising to see some sideways consolidation. I think that this is healthy after a nice move up, a couple days here in the upwards direction. Confirmed this area of support. Look at the nice tail on that candle. Now it's just looking like price is consolidating for the next move up. I think if we can get back up into the next into the backside of this resistance trend line, that would be a good signal. And if we can break out above it, I would target some of our highs from previous, which are right around 208, 210. NVDA has been very, very nicely trading. You look at this nice consolidation pattern after a nice move up. That to me is indicative of a healthy moving stock. I wouldn't be surprised to see it consolidate more after this sort of double inverted hammer candle and just sort of chop around sideways, maybe another week even. But any move out of this, and I would definitely imagine that price could make a move all the way up to 223 just based on how it's been acting. We see a nice move up, consolidation, nice move up, consolidation, move, consolidation. It's only logical that this would continue, but if it doesn't, we're prepared. We have support down here at 197.73, 50 SMA. This blue line will start to coincide with that, forming a super support on any sort of first touch. Anything lower, we really want to see this level hold at 188.40. That's sort of our key support. If we get down below that, then we're sort of back into where price was trading, and we want to see price continue in the upwards direction if we're bullish. But again, we play both sides of the coin, so it wouldn't be the worst thing to catch a pullback into this level. Microsoft consolidating, sort of like every other company we've talked about today. You can see just a couple hammers forming in this price range. If we break out over our all-time high, as always, oops, wrong tool, that's why that happened. If we break out over the all-time high here at 151.33, then we're going to be in blue sky territory. Again, $1.50 on the way up. We really want to see this sort of tail and bottoming area of this recent week act as support at 148.51. But if it breaks, we're prepared. We have the rising support trend line, this dotted one, to pay attention to. Anything lower than that, and we would look at the top of this sort of resistance zone, which is now support from the top side at 145, just about whole dollar. Last but not least, we have Amazon, which has just gone essentially sideways, consolidated like everything else. Again, not surprising to see, sort of just chopping around in here. I think the move continues to be lower. Can't really get any traction to get above this sort of zone in the chart. We're just sort of chopping around below it. So I think if we see any sort of major breakdown, the target is here first at 1707. Anything lower, 1672. If we do see any sort of move up, I wouldn't really get my hopes up of anything poking up and above this 1812 level. You can see we're almost starting to form a head and shoulders pattern. If we do see any sort of move into this zone, you can see shoulder one forming here, head would be here, and if we do form sort of another shoulder in this area and then pull back off of it, that would be a nice head and shoulders to go short on. So that's Amazon. Again, maybe with the holiday season coming up, it'll see a little boost with people buying online, but who knows how well that will really impact the price of the shares. So just something to keep in mind. Alrighty, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below if you have any questions or want to see anything specifically reviewed. As always, we are offering the newsletter, which is free. The first link in the description. We're on Instagram at tradebrigade.co, and now we do offer this Discord server. So if you want to chat real time about stocks, go ahead and hop in there. Obviously, the more participation we get from you guys, the easier it is to sort of build an audience and for you guys to have someone to chat with. So get in there, chat with some other people about stocks. Let's all make some money and stay green this week.